everybody. It's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and where else would I be but here with you? DJ Stutz here with Little Hearts Academy USA, and I'm the host of Imperfect Heroes podcast. And before we get started, I just wanted to talk to you real quickly about parent-teacher conferences that are coming up. I know that in California, my grandchildren, which is where I currently am, I'm at my son's house this week. If you've been following me, you know I've been traveling from kid to kid while we're building a new home. Anyway, in California, at least at my grandson's school, they're doing parent-teacher conferences this week. Where I taught before I retired this year was at in Denver, and they actually didn't do theirs until the 2 days before Thanksgiving break. And so, you know, every school is different, every state is different, but we're definitely in the season. And have you ever left a parent-teacher conference and felt like, well, that was a waste of time? Or I felt so rushed, or I was so distracted by other kids that were in the room, blah, blah, blah. And so I've got a workshop that's available to you, and it's parent-teacher conferences. It's at the website, www.littleheartsacademyusa.com. We'll be sure, oh gosh, yeah, I can do that. I'll be sure and put the link down in the comments below, and so you can just click on the link there. But we're going to talk about, and by the end of this little, 1 hour workshop, you're going to know what questions to ask, what are the important things to share, how can you best use that short amount of time, because really you only get 15 to 20 minutes, and that's if you're lucky, to talk to teachers and really see how your kid is doing. So what's the best use of that time? Then there's always the question, do I bring my student? Do I bring siblings? What if I can't make it? What are some options that I have? All of that is covered in the workshop. And so I hope that you will go and register and get that information and spread the word. Let other people get in on it as well. So just look for that. I'll post that as soon as we're done with this, and it'll be in the comments. So there you are. This week on the podcast, we are talking with Sherrie Barch, and she's a CEO, she's a mom, she's got a lot of things going on in her life, but years ago, she started this kind of a short story to help a little friend, a family member who had someone die. And so she just kind of was telling her, a little first grader, the story of Heaven's Bell. And the basic part of it is that in heaven, and it's a fiction story, and we know it, but it's a fun thing to consider and to help families start conversations. It's meant to be a conversation starter to help families remember and process. So it's these two 11-year-olds, and they're in school, and they have a really good friend that's very ill, and eventually this friend dies. Well, up in heaven, this friend has, wherever they are staying, shelves of bells of people that they loved, people that were important in their lives. And whenever anybody thinks about them on earth, that bell rings, and each person has their own bell. And so, I mean, it goes into it much more. Yes, I do have the book. Yes, I have read it, and it's adorable and sweet and tender. But there's also in that book, there's room for journaling, but then she has a separate journal too. That's a companion piece you can get if you want. But it has some great question starters and conversation starters. And so it's not something that you need to start at the beginning and go through to the end, but it's something that you can maybe flip open to a page, and there's room for younger kids to draw pictures, to have stickers, to glue pictures of things that remind them of the lost one. And it can be a person, but it can also be a pet. And so they are able to have these memories and then keep that and go back to it when they're really missing whoever it is that's passed on. one of the things that she said is that she's had families do, because they live all far apart, and so they would send the journal and each family would get it for a week or month or whatever you guys decide on, and then that family would add to it, and then they'd send it on to the next family member and they would get to add on to it. What a great idea. But as we were talking, we came up with some really important things to consider when we are dealing with a loss. And it's important to remember that children deal with loss at all ages. There are children who are born and their father was killed either at war or through some kind of violence or an illness, and they will never meet their parent. Others, they can lose them at a very young age. I have had students who have dealt in kindergarten with the loss of siblings, and I have had 2 students who have had dealt with loss of parents, you know, in a kindergarten age, very young, very hard, very tender time for them. And I've had a lot of students who've lost pets during that time as well. And so I think I hear sometimes parents saying, oh, they're young. Well, yes, they are young. And so that means they have fewer tools in their emotional belt to be able to manage through that, to be able to name their feelings, and to control. They might feel anger at the loss of that loved one. They might be afraid. One of the questions that I've had from students who've lost a loved one, grandmas and grandpas, a lot of those, aunts and uncles, is, will I die too? Am I gonna die too? And the answer is yeah. You're going to, but hopefully not any day soon. And then you can bring your own faith traditions in with how you believe things might be going. Won't it be interesting to find out? I think it's going to be interesting. So anyway, it's something that we want to make sure that we're not ignoring a child or sloughing off their needs because they're so young. Well, they don't really understand what's going on. Yeah, you're right. They don't, but that's all the more confusing to them then because they don't understand. I can remember I was in first grade when JFK was killed, and the weird thing was that the thing that scared me the most was that all the grown-ups around me were crying, and I didn't understand why. I mean, I heard that the president had been shot and killed, but I was in kindergarten. What really is the president? And he's not my family, and why is it, you know, I just didn't understand. And I think because I was so young, you know, the kids kind of got pushed to the side, and it was, you know, the early 60s and 63. And so it was scary for me because I didn't understand. And I just saw that everyone around me was sad. So you might want to keep this in mind for when something does happen, that your kids are really going, even the little ones are going to need help processing through that. So something to keep in mind there, and make sure that your kids know it's okay that mommy's sad, it's okay that daddy's sad, and if you're sad, it's okay for you to be sad too. In fact, isn't that a wonderful thing that we loved them enough that when they passed, they were, you know, you get to be sad that they're gone. You know, no one's singing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, right? Although I want that sung on my funeral. So anyway, but you want to make sure that the kids feel comfortable. It's all right to be sad. It's a sad time, and we're going to miss them. And then you share your faith traditions on what you believe is going on with them. And so just remember that these little guys are going to have a lot of questions, and we don't want to push those aside or slough them off. We want to be able to take the time. And if it's not a good time right now, mommy or daddy, we have some things that we need to get done, but we're going to write it down on a piece of paper that we need to come back and answer your questions. You can set a timer. We need a half an hour to get this done or whatever. And I know that it's hard when you're dealing with your own grief, but sometimes, and I have found this in my life as I've had occasions to grieve the loss of a loved one, sometimes it really helps me to help someone else through it, you know, and to help my child through it is a big deal. And that's something that really helped me. But then that leads us on to recognizing that everybody grieves differently. And so your children may not grieve in the same way that you grieve. And so make sure that it's okay, that we understand your child is doing their own thing and you might be doing your own thing that's different, but we validate whatever process that they need to go through. So my family will use humor to get through difficult situations. That's just kind of how we roll. And when my dad died very suddenly, and his brother and his sister and all of my mom's siblings all flew in, because they were all in different areas. Most of them came from Oregon. In fact, I think all of them came from Oregon. And we were, I mean, it was so sudden. And he was young, he was only 57. We didn't have a plot set or any of that done. So we're literally walking around a cemetery. They're showing us the plots that are available. And so it's the 7 of us and my dad's brother were there. And we got talking just about, well, what do you think Dad's final words were? And one of my brothers said, Dee's gonna kill me, you know? And so we wound up laughing, but that's how we processed. It wasn't that we were being disrespectful. It was how we processed things. We chose a graveside that had a poor little pine tree that was struggling to survive. And we asked the owner or the salesman, whatever it was we were dealing with, you know, what's the deal with this pine tree? And he said, the deer keep eating it. It's a mess. We're like, yep, we're burying him here. Because my dad had this ongoing battle with the deer eating his garden and the plants in his backyard where he lived. And so for us, humor is a way, and was a way, for us to deal with our sadness and our sorrows and our grieving. And so just be aware of all of these little differences. We go into so much more in the podcast, and I hope that you'll take the time to listen. And in fact, I'm going to put the direct link in the comments as well. And so if you want to just click the link and go straight to that episode, that will be in the comments as well. So I am so excited for things that are coming up with Little Hearts Academy and with the Imperfect Heroes podcast. I can tell you that I have so many people wanting to be a guest on the podcast that I have enough episodes recorded now to get us through the end of the year. And that's, you know, pretty exciting. Now I just need to edit it all. And that's very time consuming. So we'll keep going, and we're very excited for the new season that's going to come up starting in January. That will be season 3, if you can believe it. And so I just am grateful for those of you who are listening and who will leave a comment, give us those 5-star reviews. Those are so important to every podcast. If you have any that you like, really giving them that 5-star review and or 5-star rating and then a review really does help that podcast stay alive. And so I'm so grateful for those who are doing that. Again, if you want to go and see what's going on with Little Hearts Academy and what we have available, www.littleheartsacademyusa.com, and you can always find the podcast at www.imperfectheroespodcast.com. And so until next week, let's find joy in parenting. Bye, guys.